Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen. And you know, World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth, it's got some problems. Now, before I get started proper with this video, I want to clarify a couple of things. First of all, I don't dislike World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. Actually, I've been rather enjoying my time playing BFA. I've personally found that by taking all of the new elements and the old elements in small doses, by sort of spreading them out and just playing them here and there, and then getting my big fix in on my raid nights with my guild, the game has been pretty damn enjoyable. I've actually really enjoyed this new expansion quite a bit. But I do have criticisms, and that leads me to the second thing I want to clarify. These criticisms are not me knocking Battle for Azeroth. They're not meant to knock the game. They're not meant to claim that it's bad. They're not meant to say that Battle for Azeroth is a failure of an expansion. They're just meant to point out problems that this particular expansion has, which also happen to be problems that we can learn from in terms of our tabletop gaming experiences, because they are the exact same kind of problems that you can run into, which can have a negative impact on your tabletop games as well. The reason why this is because there are really two major aspects of MMORPGs and tabletop role-playing games that are shared strengths. The first is the social aspect. The social game for an MMORPG really is the core of what usually makes them fun. Most MMOs are not fun to play single player. They are not enjoyable by yourself. You're not going to usually have a whole lot of fun if you're just hopping on, playing alone on a game like World of Warcraft, because the gameplay systems themselves are very simplistic and don't really have that much depth to them compared to games that are specifically designed for single player experiences or multiplayer experiences that don't involve massive groups of people. The other aspect of it is the freedom to play the way you want, that element of player choice. And this is really where Battle for Azeroth has stumbled. So, a little primer for those of you unaware. World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth made a handful of changes coming in from Legion to fix a couple of the issues in Legion, but by and large, a lot of the stuff that did work in Legion, that those things being things like Mythic Plus dungeons, world quests, so on and so forth, were kept. They were left pretty much intact, basically unchanged, because they worked very well. Players responded incredibly well to them. People enjoyed these elements. They liked these new additions, and generally speaking, these things helped to improve the game. So Blizzard didn't really see any reason to change that, and you know what? That's perfectly fair. But there were some things in Legion that didn't work so well, like how the artifact weapon trait system worked. It ended up feeling kind of bloated, and especially with the numbers just started getting ridiculously huge. You started earning artifact power in the billions because of how the system was designed. So that got kind of ridiculous to keep track of. There was also the fact that, you know, PvP had its issues in in Legion as well. They weren't necessarily massive issues, but I honestly can't say for sure in that because I've never enjoyed PvP in World of Warcraft. But a lot of my friends do, and a lot of my friends who enjoyed PvP, I've spoken with them extensively about that, because even though I'm not interested in playing that mode, because I personally think PvP in World of Warcraft is absolutely fucking atrocious, pardon my American, I do want to know mechanically why things are a problem, or why certain design choices are a problem, because really that's just something I've not only got an interest in, but a vested interest in. I mean, my whole channel, a large portion of it is talking about design elements in tabletop games, how you can design your games, things like that, to make great experiences for yourself and your players. it behooves me to understand these sorts of things. So, a lot of them have told me, most of them actually, the vast majority told me that there were a lot of issues with PvP in Legion. Mainly the fact that there were elements of PvP that were completely worthless, and there were older elements of PvP that still had far too much importance when those didn't work well. One of those elements, namely being the Ashran PvP event from Warlords of Draenor. Apparently, for people who weren't really PvPing necessarily super competitively, which was the case with a lot of my friends, they just did it because they liked it. Well, Ashran was still a hugely important thing, and nobody liked it. Nobody wanted to do it, but if you wanted to do well in PvP, apparently you had to do it. Again, I don't PvP in WoW. I've never enjoyed it. I never will enjoy it. So, you know, I can't really say. I don't really know how true that is. I just have to take them on their word for this. So, if you are watching this video now, you are a WoW player, you're a WoW PvPer. If you can clarify this portion for me, that would be great. But this is an issue that I have heard from some people was present in Legion. And really a big one that Blizzard noticed from the PvP side was the fact that World PvP was entirely pointless. It was a complete waste of time. There was literally no reason to actually do it other than the fact that, oh, hey, look, there's a player from the other faction there. Fuck it, I'm gonna kill him. That's it. That's all it had going for it. Because there was nothing you got out of it. There was nothing of worth that really came from World PvP in Legion. So, Blizzard wanted to change that. And going into Battle for Azeroth, that is one of the changes they made that really worked for the better. War mode is apparently, even though I don't like it at all, a lot of my friends who PvP, a lot of the people I talk to who do enjoy PvP and who engage in war mode, and even some who didn't like PvP but gave war mode a shot just for the hell of it, have said, yeah, we really like war mode. The changes they made to make it more worthwhile, the fact that, you know, there are special rewards you can get for doing war mode in the form of, you know, loot boxes that will drop from the sky, you know, very kind of Call of Duty-esque kind of thing. But, you know, there are special rewards you can get for doing war mode, things like that, and, you know, they said, hey, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Personally, I used it for the first 5 days to get the 15% bonus experience to level my character faster, and then as soon as I ran into another player that actually attacked me, I said, alright, well, I'm level 119, you know, I've got no reason to leave this on now and deal with the fact that players are actually coming out here now, so screw it, turning war mode off. And I've left it off ever since, and I'm never going to turn it on again. And literally, I'm never going to turn it on again, because I have no reason to. So, in some senses, the idea of playing the game your way is still very much intact in Battle for Azeroth. You're not required to PvP to progress through the game. You're not necessarily required to do dungeons or anything like that if you want to PvP. You still have choices on which elements of the game you can approach. But that has been severely hampered. The choices now are not so meaningful anymore. And the reason why is because there's been a growing homogeneity in the systems presented in World of Warcraft over the years. Now, I'm going to stick with the PvP example because really, in my opinion, that is probably the most clear example of this particular problem. Because even though I don't do it, even though I don't engage in it, I do try to keep up to tabs with it. And there is one big change they made that really kind of left me scratching my head and thinking, well, wait a minute, why would you do that, Blizzard? What is it about this new system you want to put in that really... What good new thing does this add to improve the state of the game? I thought about that for a while. And the more I thought about the changes they made to the Conquest system, and for those who are not aware, Conquest system is basically this. Conquest was a currency that you would accrue. or it was a currency or a ranking system. It was a little bit of both back in Legion that you would accrue, and then you could spend conquest points to purchase player versus player gear if you wanted to, PvP in Legion. Now, one of those problems in Legion was the fact that the PvP gear was not good enough to counterbalance the strength of the PvE gear, the gear you would get from Mythic Dungeons or from raids. I did actually do a little bit of PvP in Legion, even though I don't like it, because there are some old sets of PvP gear that you can pick up to transmog, which I liked the look of. So I ran a couple battlegrounds during one week where there was an event going on that gave you bonus things for running battlegrounds, just so I could get the tokens that are needed to buy outdated gear so I could get the look. And I want you to bear in mind, this was during the start of the last section of Legion, the Argus patch, which was the final big patch of Legion. It was a few weeks leading up into the last raid, where you're exploring the planet of Argus, and then the last raid opened. So we're talking like the last 3 or so months of Legion. So 3 months before Legion ended was the first and only time throughout the entire 2 years that expansion was live that I ever bothered to PvP. All I did before that was run raids and dungeons and do world quests. And you know what? I would hop into a few battlegrounds, and oftentimes I would find that I, a completely unexperienced PvPer, just by the value of my gear alone, was usually in the top 3 in terms of damage done and kills obtained. Which went to show that that was a major problem in Legion. So, of course, Blizzard wanted to fix that. However, I think that they trained their sights in the wrong way. The reason I say this is because now Conquest no longer lets you purchase individual pieces of gear. See, before, since Conquest allowed you to purchase individual pieces of gear, you could potentially, as a PvEer, let's say, for example, that you've been running a couple some raids, some dungeons with your guild or whichever group of friends you play with, but you have had incredible problems, massive problems, getting a particular piece of gear that you need to replace. Let's say you had a belt that was very outdated. It was a belt you got from a heroic dungeon, so it was considerably lower strength than this other stuff you're getting from raids. But you've been running this raid now for the past 6 weeks. Once a week, every 6 weeks, and your guild now has it on lockdown. You're killing every boss, and never once has a belt dropped for you. And never once have you had the luck of having a belt drop for you in a mythic dungeon, which would be similarly powerful. You've just had really bad luck. Well, if you wanted, in Legion, you could hop in, do some PvP, earn up some conquest points, and then once you did, hop back over to your PvP vendor and buy a belt to replace the one that you had. You had options there. Now, Conquest, you just fill up a bar, and you're given a piece of loot, predetermined in a predetermined order. You don't have a choice anymore. You don't have that option. It's been taken away. It's been homogenized. Everybody follows the same track. You fill up the bar, you get the same pieces of loot in the same order. The same slots in the same order. There's no choice in it anymore. It's predetermined. And there's a lot of other instances throughout Battle for Azeroth where that has been the case. Azerite gear, the replacement that they made for the artifact weapon system and legendary system from Legion, as well as replacement for class tier sets. The class raid sets, which were sets of 4 to 6 pieces of gear that you would be aiming for, which would give you special bonuses based on your class. those were all removed in Battle for Azeroth and put together into the new Azerite gear system, which constitutes your head, your shoulders, and your chest piece. And each of these pieces, your head, your shoulder, and your chest piece, has different traits that you can select for your class and the different specs, and different traits are better than other traits, so you're looking for specific individual pieces of gear. But because these traits can be so much better than other traits, sometimes you will end up with dungeon gear that is weaker in terms of its item level and its actual power and stats, which is better than raid gear, which is higher level item level and higher stats, simply because the Azerite power on the dungeon gear is better for you. Again, homogenized. You're looking for specific pieces of gear with specific power sets when it comes to your Azerite, and that's going to change from spec to spec. Every different spec in your class. Let's say it's my Death Knight. I play the Frost spec. It's a high damage, quick moving, fast attack spec that relies on a lot of random special abilities to be procced and triggered as I'm playing it. Well, if I decide, you know what, I kind of want to play Unholy now. Well, now, if I want to play it as efficiently as possible, I have to look up what Azerite gear pieces, or what Azerite gear abilities are the best for Unholy, figure out what pieces have those, farm those pieces, keep those extra pieces in my bag, and then anytime I want to play Unholy, swap to that set of gear, just so that I can be playing efficiently. Because of this homogenization, a huge issue has been created in terms of a system that was meant to simplify an issue from Legion, now making it much more complicated. But more important than that, again, player freedom is being impacted. You are looking for very specific pieces of gear, and the impact that these specific pieces of gear have is so great now that sometimes you will turn down newer pieces of equipment that should be better because this older piece of equipment has a trait that is stronger for you, and the power level of that trait is weighted too heavily. So because of a lot of these system changes, player homogenization has become a major issue in Battle for Azeroth. And it feels to an even larger issue now because a lot of the systems that worked for Legion were brought over unchanged. And so now players are feeling like the game is smaller than it actually is. The impact that it's having on them feels reduced. And really a lot of people just are not enjoying it as much as they really ought to be. And a large part of the reason for that does ultimately, in my opinion, boil down to the fact that the freedom you have to choose the way you want to play as a player has been severely impacted by this much more rigid system of progression that Blizzard has presented. And therein lies the lesson that we can apply to our tabletop games. Blizzard has made their game easier for new players to pick up and get involved with, but it has come at a price, and that price is the feeling of satisfaction that comes with making personal choices on how you approach the game and having those choices potentially work out much better than you expected. Because everything has been homogenized, because it's all been sort of, hammered down into a single way of doing things, a lot of that has been lost. And that is something that we need to watch for in our tabletop games as well, because I remind you once again, the greatest strength of our tabletop role-playing games is the fact that they are flexible. They are meant to be approached the way we want to approach them. And because we can approach them the way we enjoy it, we can build the games the way we like to build them, we can play our games the way we like to play them, and we can experience the experience we desire. World of Warcraft used to do this as well. But more and more lately, with each new expansion, that has happened less and less. Battle for Azeroth has had this become really its most major issue. It has done a lot of good for them, but it has also created some serious problems. And these are problems that can very much exist within our tabletop games as well. And as GMs, they are problems we need to avoid. So that's about all I have for that topic for you guys today, friends and gamers. What are your thoughts on this? If you're a player of World of Warcraft, if you played Battle for Azeroth, tell me what your thoughts are on this below. I'm particularly interested in the opinions of those of you who both play WoW and tabletop games. So let me know what you're thinking about this topic in the comments below. If you like this video, please feel free to leave it a like. And if you'd like to see more, I strongly recommend subscribing and hitting that bell notification button to get some notifications. But the best way to get notified of when I post new videos is to follow me on social media, and you can find links for that in the description down below. Also linked in the description down below, you can find my Patreon page. If you like what I do and you would like to support me financially, you can do so through Patreon. I would appreciate literally every donation I get, no matter how small. Every little bit helps. But even more than that, I just really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time out of your day to watch this video that I've prepared for you here. And with that all now said and done, dear friends and gamers of all stripes, as usual, my name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and as always, it is my sincerest hope that you continue to roll high, role play well, and game on. Have a wonderful day.